Inversions, the art of going upside down. This is something that has been attempted on roller coasters since before the American Civil War. It was abandoned for a long time, and then came roaring back with some brand new, innovating manufacturers. These engineers are always inventing new ways to throw you upside down, and by my count, I have 30 different kinds of inversions, and I want to talk about all of them and where they came from. This is the origin of every inversion. First, I want to thank my Patreons and my new members. Roman Titino, Adam G, Mr. Single Rider's opinions are better than mine, Andrew Lorenz, and Carl Deacon. If you want bonus access, bonus content, behind the scenes videos, a shout out when you join, and your name on this fancy Patreon screen, follow the link below and join. There are some funky one-offs that only appear on one coaster. I made a video about those one-of-a-kind coasters a while back. This is only going to look at more popular, more legit inversions, not just the ones that were given crazy names, and I combined a lot of similar inversions into one group. Let's start with a very basic vertical loop. There are 1,042 coasters that have a basic loop, and Revolution at Magic Mountain gets credit for being the first modern coaster to have one. That's true. When that opened in 1976, the last attempt for a looping coaster was closed in the 1950s, and before that, you're looking at the early 1900s. That's where you're going to find your loop-to-loop coaster at Coney Island, or the one at Olentangy Park in Ohio. But for the first one, you have to go all the way back to 1842, Centrifugal Railway at Hull Zoological Gardens, a park in the UK that had this open for 2 weeks in September. These had one-person cars. You drop down to a 40-foot loop and then up another spike. This newspaper clipping says it goes 100 miles an hour, but I have my doubts. I want to point out the awesome interlocking loops, by my count only appearing on 3 coasters. One being Orient Express at Worlds of Fun in 1980, and the other 2 opening very close to each other in 1978. Loch Ness Monster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg made its debut on June 3, 1978, and Lightning Loops at Great Adventure opened a couple weeks before that, making that officially the first one. A corkscrew is basically a stretched out loop, the entrance and exit being farther apart, where in a loop they're right next to each other. 560 coasters have a corkscrew. That includes the wraparound corkscrew on Drachenfire and Fury at Bobbyland. Also, the wingovers you find on the Batman clones. This element was actually the first modern inversion, appearing on corkscrew at Knott's Berry Farm in 1975, 1 year before Revolution, and it was one of 4 clones that opened that year. It just happened to be first. That includes Wabash Cannonball at Opryland, USA, Chicago Loop at Old Chicago, and Corkscrew at Magic Harbor in South Carolina. When it comes to the interlocking corkscrew, you find these on 15 different coasters, almost exclusively on B&Ms. The first time we saw this was on Kumbla at Busch Gardens Tampa in 1993. A Cobra Roll is a set of 2 inversions, flipping up, leveling out, and flipping over again, coming back the opposite direction you came in. This makes for a great element to turn the train back around. You'll find these on 216 coasters worldwide, across a bunch of different manufacturers, mostly from Vekoma and B&M, and the first one was on Boomerang at Six Flags Mexico, built in 1982 and opening in 1984. There are 53 boomerangs and every single one has a Cobra Roll, 4 of them coming in 1984. The first one to actually open was Boomerang at Bellewaerde Park in Belgium, but technically the first Cobra Roll to exist was this one in Mexico. An inline twist is a fully stretched out corkscrew, pulled out all the way so the track rolls in a straight line. 198 coasters have these. You find these on all kinds of coasters, but the first one is on a very familiar model, the Vekoma SLC, and the first one was Condor at Wallaby Holland in 1994. These feature a double inline twist, the last 2 inversions on the ride. 42 of those 198 are made up of SLCs. The 0G roll is very similar to the inline twist, but this one is different because it takes place on the top of an airtime hill. You'll find these on all kinds of coasters, 132 around the world. RMC has made good use of them, but B&M is the one who invented it, and the first one can be found on Batman the Ride at Six Flags Great America in 1992. The Sidewinder is half a loop, half a corkscrew, almost kind of like one half of a Cobra Roll, ending up 90 degrees from where the train got started. You find these on SLCs also, the ride's 3rd inversion. So, of the 124 coasters that has one, 42 are SLCs, but not the first one. This goes back to the Dragon at Ocean Park in Hong Kong, opening in 1984, a custom aero looper that has 2 loops and then a Sidewinder. There's also a reverse Sidewinder, the exact same element but you come in through the top and dive down. Much less popular as 12 coasters have this, the first being from Vekoma. Or Aero. Or both. Aero started it, went bankrupt, Vekoma finished it, and it's called Crazy Roller Coaster at Star World in China, opening in 1986. The Heartline roll is yet another roll, so how does this one differ from an inline twist or a 0G roll? This is nearly on a flat plane, like an inline twist, but this does see the track change elevation so the train is always on the same level. The idea is, the train wraps around using the rider's heart as a focal point, making for a very comfortable experience. You'll find these by themselves, like on hiders at Casino Pier, also a double, like Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City, a triple, like on the Intamin 8 inversion coasters, and a quad, 4 of these in a row. Those are found on the Intamin 10 inversion coasters. 116 coasters have at least one, and the first one was found on Ultra Twister at Great Adventure in 1986, the Togo Pipeline version, this having 3 Heartline rolls, including 2 that were taken backwards. The dive loop is an airtime hill that flips you over and turns into a half loop, coming back the way you came. Another great inversion to turn the layout back around. B&M made these popular. Gerstlauer and SNS and RMC and mock rides have tried this out. 78 exist, and that includes the weird dive loops, like the max dive loop, incline dive loop, stalled dive loop, and the first one also came on an Ultra Twister, this being at World Food Festival in Japan in 1988, this one being moved to Rizutsu Resort the next year, and you can still ride this to this day. Most Ultra Twisters have a switch track, a slower process to turn the train back towards the station, but this one rises into a dive loop to do the same thing, and that's kind of insane. The Immelman is just a dive loop, but instead of rising up and diving down, it starts at the bottom and then rises up. Then, flips you back right side up and back the way you came. B&M dominates this category. I think every single dive coaster starts with an Immelman after the first drop, and others have used it since then, but this is still really a B&M element. This was introduced on Montu in 1996, going into a tunnel and exploding into this Immelman right over the ride's entrance, heading back to its main course. A rollover is a double inversion, the train rising up into a loop, then rolling over and staying about the same level and rolling over again, down into another half loop, heading out the same direction it came from. This is almost exclusively used on Vekoma SLCs, that heart-looking inversion we all know and love, and we go back to Condor at Wallaby Holland in 1994. 53 coasters have this, all but 9 are SLCs, Pinfari getting involved, as well as Intamin with Sandy's Blasting Bronco. A cutback is like a corkscrew, but instead of going through the same direction, it wraps around and sends you back the way you came. Gerstlauer and RMC have used this quite a bit, 25 coasters total, but the first one actually came from Aerodynamics, Drachenfire at Busch Gardens Williamsburg in 1992. This is a great small-scale way to turn the train back around when a dive loop or an Immelman or Cobra roll doesn't work. A 0G stall is just like a 0G roll, but instead of rising into the airtime hill and flipping around, you rise into an airtime hill and it just hangs you upside down, twisting back upright the same direction it came in. RMC made this popular, Gerstlauer and Intamin also getting into the game as of late. 25 out there, but it all got started in 2014 with Goliath at Six Flags Great America. That epic 0G stall is one of, if not the best part of the ride. The Skyloop is very specific to one model, the Maurer Skyloop. There are 23 around the world. The lift chain taking the car up a vertical lift, all the way upside down, releases the car into a roll. It's briefly right side up before it twists back over and dives back to the station. It's similar to a rollover. This one just isn't inverted and has that nice downward tilt. The first one came back in 2004, Skywheel at Skyline Park in Germany. The barrel roll is yet another kind of roll. Some people say this is the same as an inline twist. Others say it's the same as a Heartline roll. I think that one's more accurate. The track definitely rises up to try to keep the rider at the same level. Regardless, RCDB has this listed on 17 coasters. A whole bunch of manufacturers have their hands on this one, including Velocicoaster's famous Mosasaurus roll. But the first one belongs to RMC, Joker at Discovery Kingdom in 2016, that final inversion. Also, get used to the Joker, it's not the last time we'll see it on this list. The top hat is like a very tall cutback. You rise up, go vertical, twist, and go upside down, and then back down vertical, twisting back the way you came. 17 coasters use this, from Gerstlauer to Mach to Vekoma to Premier. They're putting one on Alpenfury this year, and they're responsible for the original top hat, Batman and Robin the Chiller at Great Adventure in 1997. This was built in 1997 along with the Mr. Freeze clones at Over Texas and St. Louis, but those were delayed to 1998. Chiller opened for a very short time in 1997, and therefore it's the first. The incline loop is just a vertical loop laying on its side. B&M stand-ups made good use of this, starting off with Mantis in 1996, the first of 16, and Gerstlauer got involved on some of their Eurofighters. And don't forget Top Fun. These terrible fair coasters like Rainier Rush also have an incline loop. The dive drop is similar to a dive loop, but instead of rising up into an airtime hill, this stays flat and twists over into a half loop. B&M made this popular with their wing coasters, using this as a first drop. The first time we saw this was on Swarm at Thorpe Park in 2012, the first of 16. We've also seen Intamin use it on Hyperion, and Mach Rides use it on some of their Big Dippers. The Batwing is like an upside-down Cobra roll. You start off with a dive loop, and then you pull right into an Immelman. So, instead of rising into the inversion and being right side up at the peak, You're diving into this inversion, and you're right side up at the bottom. That makes for a very intense moment, the B&M inverts, Montu, and Afterburn standing out to me. 12 of these are out there, and Aerodynamics built the first one, Orient Express at Worlds of Fun in 1980. This was the last coaster to install interlocking loops, but also had the world's first batwing, making this one very interesting coaster, and too bad it's been gone for 22 years now. A fly-to-lie can only be used on certain coasters. You either have to be in the flying position, or on the side of the track. This is where you're under the track, and the track flips over and you're on top of it. It's really half of one inversion, and it's usually accompanied by a lie-to-fly, where you're on top of the track and end up underneath, but not always. 12 coasters have a fly-to-lie, but only 8 coasters have a lie-to-fly. X2 and the SNS 4th Dimension coasters don't have a lie-to-fly, neither does Flying Dinosaur. The first time we saw this was on Stealth at Paramount Square America, opening in 2000 as the first real large-scale attempt at a flying coaster, traversing some of that course in the flying position, and some on your back. A barrel roll down drop is just a massively inclined barrel roll. At first, it just served in place of a first drop, but now that's not been the case. 11 coasters have this, and it started with Medusa Steel Coaster at Six Flags Mexico in 2014. Storm Chaser and Twisted Timbers also use this as a first drop. They also put one on Twisted Cyclone and a crazy one on Iron Gwazi, but this has really taken off in the last 2 years. First, Hyperia at Thorpe Park. Then, 5 coasters opening this year. Yoi at Wallaby Holland, Stardust Racers, Alpen Fury, and 2 tilt coasters, Circuit Breaker and Iron Rattler. The pretzel loop is only found on one model, the B&M Flyer, 9 total. That started with Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Over Georgia in 2002. In the flying position, this rises up, the track wraps around underneath you. You end up on your back and rise back up, level out back into the flying position, and that is one insanely intense element. It looks just like a pretzel from the side, so that's where that comes from. The banana roll is controversial. Is this 1 or 2 inversions? It's kind of like a cobra roll, rising up into a loop, kind of flipping you sideways at the top, and then rolling back down the way you came. It's not quite a cobra roll, not quite a top hat. It's a weird thing you find on 7 coasters. SNS, Premier, and the first one to do it, Gerstlauer. We saw this back in 2011 on Takabisha at Fuji-Q Highland. The Sea Serpent is just like a cobra roll, but instead of sending the train back the way it came, it continues on in the same direction. As popular as the cobra roll is, only 6 coasters have a Sea Serpent. There's no rhyme or reason here. The B&M Medusa, the Gerstlauer Smiler, the SNS Steel Curtain, and the first one, the Vekoma Rock and Roller Coaster at Hollywood Studios, opening in 1999. You can't see it, but here's what it looks like on Express Platform 13, the same ride, just outside, so trust me, it's there. The step-up underflip sounds made up, but it's a pretty legit inversion. This rises up, twists 270 degrees, and then dives off to the side. 5 coasters do this, and remember, I said don't forget about Joker at Discovery Kingdom. That's back, and also claims this one when it opened in 2016. 4 RMCs use this, and 1 mock spinner. Ride to Happiness uses this as its final inversion. The Norwegian loop is basically a pretzel loop, just you're on top of the track and not below it. You rise up, twist and dive down, rise back up into a half loop, twist back over, and keep on going the same direction you started. It's called a Norwegian loop because its first use was in Norway, the Intamin Speed Monster at Tusenfryd in 2006. This was the first of 3. Intamin followed up with Fahrenheit, and then Mach got involved with Helix at Leesburg. The Finnish loop is kind of similar. This rises up, twists down, and into a vertical loop. That loop kind of being flat, so it gives you some good hang time. This is called the Finnish loop because it started in Finland, the Gerstlauer Junker at Power Park. This also appears on 3 coasters, replicated on Monster at Adventureland, and once again, Mach coming in hot with Big Dipper at Wiener Prater opening this year. The saxophone is one of the most insane inversions ever, but it's very niche, only appearing on the SNS Screamin' Squirrel. Some may even call this the world's steepest drop, wrapping around 180 degrees, hanging you upside down for a long period of time before leveling out. Sequoia Magic Loop at Gardaland was the first of 3, opening in 2005. This SNS model never really taking off. The Zero G Winder is also a weird one, but I say it's just legit enough to be included on here. It's basically a Zero G roll that doesn't make it all the way around, turning into a Sidewinder. So, you rise up, flip over, and then come out the side. Only 3 coasters had this, and it didn't even exist till 2019. Yukon Striker at Canada's Wonderland came first. 6 weeks later, Taiga at Linnanmaki gave us our second one, and in 2022, Pantheon made this its first main element. Last one, the Overbanked Inversion. This is just a very, very overbanked curve, going past the 135 degree point. At that point, technically being upside down, but not qualifying to be a Zero G roll, or a Zero G Winder, or literally any other inversion. Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City got this started in 2013, the first element after the first drop. RMC followed with Untamed in 2019, and Vekoma got involved this past year with Fianna Force. So, there you go, the first of every type of inversion, at least the real inversions that don't have made up names. Let me know if I missed anything or got anything wrong, and if you have any other thoughts, sound off in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like. And if you're new here and love coasters, please give me a sub. Also, check out my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.